Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Onion Soup. I'm excited to have our guest on today, Miss Angel Altman. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Good. Thank you so much for coming on. I feel like today's topic is so important as we dive into the importance of herbs and holistic health in this fast-paced, ever-changing AI technical world. So tell us a little bit about that and how you got started with everything that you do.
So I've been a nurse for 30 years or almost 30, aging myself. And I've worked in various aspects of nursing from just regular conventional to the last 10 or 12 years I've spent more in the holistic and integrative world. And what I've come to realize is as times evolve and change, it puts such a strain on the body that even medicine is having a time keeping up with because we're so overwhelmed, overstimulated that it's actually adding to a lot of our health issues. And I feel like medicine is actually getting behind in keeping up with that because the body wasn't designed to experience that much stimuli at once. And so things are just, and it's been my job has been more to bring a balance and to help people find ways outside of medicine to kind of balance and bring themselves back to a state of whole, to oneness, to balance, to homeostasis.
Wow, Angel, I love that so much. So I've also worked in the medical field for a number of years now, and I'm actually a laboratory scientist. So lab
Okay.
techs, and I 100% agree with you. I feel like when we talk about Western medicine, a lot of it is about putting a band-aid on a problem or a symptom that we have, but it's not really healing the root cause. At what point did you realize that there's so much more to medicine than what we're led to believe here in the Western world?
Um, well, it came with my own diagnosis. I was told at 43 that I had lupus, and I was told that there was not much that could be done for that, and I needed to start medications and treatments, and chances were I was going to have a decline over the next 5 to 10 years. And I had been told that at the rate I was going, I may even require wheelchair assistance by the time I was 50, just because I had had such an impact on my joints and my muscles and just in moving in general. And thankfully, I worked again in the holistic world at that time, and I knew that medicine wasn't the first route that I wanted to go. So I started focusing more on changing what I ate, supplements, adding in essential oils, adding in herbs, teas, things like that. And I got a significant response from that. I was about 50, 60% better. But what I didn't realize at that time was that's just part of the healing process. The bigger part is you have to change all of the stimuli coming in, because if you don't, it's really hard for the body to dig out of that hole that it's in. And you have to change your mindset. You have to change what you watch on TV, the food that you eat, what you drink, the algorithm on your Facebook page, even. You have to work at changing those things because all of that altogether adds to or takes away from disease in the body.
Mm. I love that so much because it's really touching on this really interesting topic about what we really do bring in, what we're ingesting, and how we take in information, and specifically leaning towards the autoimmune conditions that a lot of us have that we typically develop over time and over years. So, how does one start to change things? Because when you're talking about changing your external stimuli to meet your internal world or to shift your internal world, how do you start that? It's kind of challenging to change the algorithm to change your food, your diet, the music you listen to? How do you shift those things?
So the first thing that I had to start with was I had to learn to love myself. And anybody that I work with here, that's usually the first question. On a scale of 1 to 10, one's the worst, 10's the best. How much do you love yourself? Like really, truly love and care about yourself. And most people, when they first come in, oh, 5 or 6. But then when you ask them, okay, for each question, you lose a point. Do you do things out of obligation? Do you do things when you don't really have the energy? Do you do things out of expectation? Do you do things because if you don't do it, it won't get done? Each one of these things is a point that you lose because you're actually giving away your energy to take care of others and to handle other issues for other people. And I'm not saying not to take care of or love others, but you have to learn to treat yourself just like the people you're taking care of. And there's so many studies where 2 women will be diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. One lives, one dies. And then they want to really look at what was a part of the one living. And some of the things they find was she loved and cared for herself as much as she did the people around her. And so often people are still trying to take care of others and they're battling an illness themselves and they're not taking care of themselves like they would if this was their spouse, their child, their best friend. And so first I had to learn how to love myself and to take care of myself equally to other people. And then once I started really learning how to do that, then I realized things that I had accepted in the past, I could no longer accept. Beliefs that I had held in the past, I didn't really believe those things anymore. And all of those little micro changes led to very large, overwhelming changes down the road. And all of that works together to change where you're at and where you're headed.
Mm, that's so interesting. So, when you're looking at these micro changes over time, I feel like it's really important you point it out that way because a lot of times people really do think you have to make these drastic, dramatic changes and expect these
Right.
miracles overnight, which simply isn't true. You didn't get this way in 1 to 2 or 3 days, so it's probably not going to take you that long to get out of it. But you're talking about loving yourself, and you mentioned a couple of questions that you ask others. Can you dive a little bit more deeply into those questions so that way people can, ask themselves and figure out do they truly love themselves, or is that just an expression that they're saying?
Our culture has taught us that the way other people know that they're loved is by what you put into them, how much you give them. And so, you put everything into a relationship, you put everything into being a parent, you put everything into your job, and we get annual performance reviews at our job as to how well we put ourselves into that job. And you get feedback from your family as how you put into that, and from your spouse or your significant other, how well you put into that. And what we don't realize is a lot of times we trade away our health to put things out there and take care of others. And then you have to take into consideration firstborn state. Those children tend to be more attentive into taking care of siblings or looking after siblings. You know, you just have so many other factors that go into maybe you had a rough childhood and you were parentified as a child. So you tend to over take care of others. So when you start really looking into those things that served you as a child and you had to have those things to survive, when we bring those into the adult world, they go from being things that helped us survive to they start causing damage because we are no longer in that same situation to where we still have to do those things, but we don't know any different. So we keep stuck in that loop. And what we don't realize is we are literally trading our health to others. And so the questions I usually ask are, do you do things out of obligation? If you're doing something out of obligation, not because it's a true desire, not because it's something that you want to be a part of, but, oh, I got to go take care of so and so, or I've got to go help this because it's an obligation, that actually carries a negative weight in the body when you do something that way. If you're doing things when you don't really have the energy, you don't feel well, you're maybe recovering from a cold or an illness and you just don't really have the energy, but I've got to make myself go. Instead of allowing the body to relax and rest, again, we're putting an extra weight and an extra stressor on the body that we don't need to be doing. But it takes people realizing their self-worth, their self-love, and then they can start asking themselves these questions without feeling guilt, shame, like they're doing something wrong. And it's not a quick thing. I wish it was, but it's not a quick fix. And it takes people a long time to change and to shift these patterns that served and protected them when they were younger. But we have to learn that those things are not serving us now. Now they're serving us up a disease or a disorder.
Angel, how do we start saying no when we're not used to doing that?
At first, you're going to get a lot of pushback. And usually, what I recommend for people is pick something that is not catastrophic. You've got people that are used to relying on you. I did work with one lady who said, everybody in the family comes to me. Everybody comes to me for everything. I have to sit down and hash out all of the arguments and make sure everybody's on the same page. And the first time we started working together, I told her, I said, the next time you get that call, simply say, I'll be there. You guys get started, but I'm busy with something. I can't come right now. You guys get started. I said, and then don't rush there. Don't rush there. Make sure that they have to start talking and communicating. It's also allowing other people to realize you're not just going to rush right in and fix everything. And and some people it's just simply they have to start learning to say, I'll be there, but not rushing to it right now. Taking the time of, okay, now I can do it. Now I have time. Now I've rested, instead of saying, okay, I'm on my way, even though you don't have that energy. We always tend to put everybody else's crisis ahead of our own health and ahead of our own issues. So learning to balance that first is one of the first things. Understanding what is truly a crisis and what is just somebody implementing their avoidance of an issue by calling you.
That's a really interesting point. Understand the difference between a crisis and just really putting all the burden onto your shoulders and expecting you to carry that weight for them. It's interesting to me because when I first started saying no to people, I felt really weird and guilty about it. And as I started getting more used to it, I actually started becoming more honest about it. And I would say, I
Mhm.
can't do that right now. I'm actually going to go see a movie with my fiance. And after that, we have dinner. So maybe tomorrow, if you're still having a
Right,
problem. And I feel like people are a lot more respectable with your time, especially generally they're family and friends. These are other loved ones. So they are more respectable of your time when you give them
right.
a general reason. And it doesn't mean you have to over explain yourself. But speaking of over explaining, how do you mitigate that? Because sometimes we get into this situation where we feel like we have to justify why we don't want to do something instead of just saying, I don't want to do it. So, how do you stop yourself from over expressing and over giving?
Open your mind and expand your consciousness. Welcome to Chakra Wonders, where style meets soul. Designed to uplift your energy and inspire your path to higher awareness. Every piece is a reflection of the cosmos and the power within you. Explore our collection and discover what resonates with your soul. Visit chakrawonders.com and step into conscious living. Chakra Wonders, conscious style for a conscious world.
I think in the beginning, that's part of it. You have to learn, again, through the baby steps. You have to learn that jumping into things and saying all the reasons why is making you feel better. They've heard no. They're upset or they're over it, one or the other. You're the one trying to justify your feelings. And when we understand what is and is not a crisis, and we understand um, I do or I don't have the energy. This is or is not for me to step into. I think a lot of times we start realizing that less is more. Less is more. I don't have to explain to you, I really don't feel good today. I was up all night. My stomach hurt. My head hurts. I don't need to go into that. I can just simply say, I'm not feeling my best today. And, I just can't today. Like you said, I'm happy to help you tomorrow, or we can talk about this tomorrow, but I don't have the energy in me right now. And once we start doing that, unfortunately, when we love ourselves at a low level, so on the scale of 1 to 10, most people, when they start working with me, find that they love themselves between 2 and 4. So when you love yourself at a level 2, you accept behavior at a level 2 love for yourself that you will never accept at a level 6, 7, or 8. When you get to 6, 7, or 8, you're going to look back and be like, I what? I was okay with people treating me that way. And that's part of it as well. We explain when we first start out because we're fearful of losing our friend or fearful of upsetting or disappointing. But what we find is, especially in the friend world, and unfortunately with some family members, as you start loving yourself and you start setting boundaries and you start changing things, people were only hanging on to you because you loved yourself at a level 2 or 3, and they were using you for their gain. When you start seeing your value and your worth and loving yourself and taking care of yourself, and you don't jump at every issue that they have, you're not as important to them. And unfortunately, we do find as we start our healing journey, we do lose some friends and family along the way. That doesn't mean you doesn't talk to them ever again, but it can change the dynamic of your relationship with them, because the love that and the friendship or the love and the family relationship that you thought were there was there because of what you did for them. And that's not true love and true connection when it's what you do for me. So it's very important to learn less is more, but also to start paying attention to the people who give the most pushback. And if they start using things like, you're always tired, you're so self-centered, you're always worrying about you, what about me? These are relationships that you have to start evaluating, because I don't like to throw out the word toxic relationships, because every person on the planet has flaws. And it depends on the situation that I'm in with someone as to whether or not they perceive me as a good person or a bad person. So if I'm not having my best day and you don't get the best version of me, you're going to throw out the word, oh, she's toxic, she's horrible. When in reality, I just wasn't feeling my best that day. So I don't like to throw out the word toxic, but you can find that some relationships are not healing relationships. And that person has to do their work too, so that they can keep up with you as you start healing and improving your own body. Some people are into that and they get motivated by seeing you. Others, you have to love them where they're at and just accept that they're not at that point yet.
Yeah. Now, I read something many years ago, and it was talking about how you could ask 100 different people what they think about you and get 100 different answers. And it was pointing to how people's individual interpretations of you is not the totality of who you are as a person. It's really just
Correct.
this broad overview. Like you said, perhaps I just wasn't feeling well that day. Perhaps I was upset that day. I'm allowed to not be happy all the time. That's unrealistic. It's so fascinating to me when we talk about holistic health. It always starts with self love, setting boundaries, and reevaluating relationships and situations. But diving into that next level of holistic health, what about when you're adjusting the things coming into you, such as the food you eat, the things you drink, what you listen to, and what you watch? How do you start to adjust that, and what does that look like oftentimes?
So I myself I'm an all in kind of girl. When I decide I'm doing something, I'm all in. And so when I started my journey, I stopped all gluten, all dairy, all processed sugars. I changed all of that. And some people, that's good for them. That's how they operate. Other people, if you say you have to stop that, what they hear is, I can't have that. And when we were little, that was a punishment. You know, we were grounded, things were withheld, things were taken away. We didn't get to go out to recess. We couldn't go out and play with our friends. Our toy got held for a while. So we associate things being taken away as you've done something bad, you've done something wrong. And a lot of times they will blame themselves for having the issue that they have, not realizing a lot of times the things that we eat and drink, we don't realize the damaging effects. You know, I have family members who, battling diabetes, thought they were doing the best thing for themselves by buying sugar-free food. So everything in the house was sugar-free. Sugar-free this, sugar-free that, sugar. And when I sit down and start explaining to them, this has 4 different artificial sweeteners. This has all of these different chemicals. Your liver has to break down all of those things that you ate. Then when you look at the drink that you think you're drinking that's so healthy and all the artificial sweeteners and things, your liver has to break that down. Your liver has to break down what you breathe in if you're in an area where there's a lot of toxic environment. And I'm speaking specifically to people who live near or around chemical plants or things like that where stuff's in the air. Or if you work in an industry, hairdressers, beauticians, cosmetologists, these people are inhaling chemicals all throughout the day. Then you put on clothing that you've washed with detergents and things like that. So your poor body takes all of this stuff in all day long. And the liver is usually where a lot of it gets filtered through. And when the liver gets stagnant, then we start feeling bad. And then the body starts getting backed up a little bit. Inflammation can take over. All of these things start in, and then we start feeling a little bad. You know, a few days here or there. And then over time, we have more bad days than good days. But nobody said, hey, all of these things that you're doing are overwhelming your liver. So I usually always recommend focus on your liver first. If you can get the liver focused on with herbs, things that are gentle, things that the body understands, that is not a synthetic chemical, because that's the last thing you need is one more chemical into the liver. But this is a very easy way to support the body, support the liver, and allow some of these things that have come in to start being released over time to where it's not overwhelming the body and overwhelming the system. So that's usually where I recommend is targeting that liver first, usually through either a tincture or through an herbal tea. Now, if you have a more advanced issue, if you're dealing with fatty liver or if you're dealing with, a chronic illness, you might want to amp that up and maybe take some supplements that also target the liver. But those are usually where I recommend for anybody that is starting out. You have to start with self-love. You have to change the entire, basically your small world, your world bubble. But you also have to target that liver first. Because when we open our pool up in the spring, we don't just jump in. It's yucky. We have to get the filter running and we have to put the right chemicals in and get everything running and smooth and cleaned out. And that's basically what we have to do with the body.
Mm. Angel, we only have a few minutes left. Is there anything you'd like to leave with the audience before we go?
Um, the biggest thing I would want anybody that's wanting to start a health journey or even to, kind of kick theirs up a notch, really investigate how herbal tea can impact the body. And not only that, but take the time to create a cup of tea. Those are the most important things, is those calm moments. Our phones are great if we need them for work. Like you said, they can be very toxic though too, and people don't realize how addicted they get to them. And they can actually feed a disease process or they can feed a healing process. So make sure that you choose wisely. As with what you eat, every food choice is just that. It is a choice and it is feeding one thing or the other. You can't get out of it. So you're either choosing to feed a disease process or you're choosing to feed a healing process. You are the one who gets the consequences of your choices. And so, look at ways to implement herbs into your food, herbs into your diet. Spices are amazing for the body. And taking out a soft drink or a cup of coffee a day and adding in a herbal tea or even a green tea can have so many amazing positive benefits to the body and to the brain.
Wow, I love that so much. And where can people find you?
I am in Chillicothe, Ohio, and you can find me at teaoflifeapothecary.com. And we also have an Etsy shop. We're online. We have all the things.
Well, thank you so much, Angel, for coming in. And thank you all for tuning into this episode of Onion Soup. We'll have all that information down in the description below. And if you like this episode, please like, follow, share with anybody you feel that needs to hear this information. As always, have a blessed rest of your day. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for having me.